Thank you for joining Secure Remote Support, Combating the Evolving Threat Landscape. And our speaker of today, the one, the only, Chris Savio. Hi, thank you for joining us. Happy to have you.
Hi, Danny. Excited to be here.
Perfect. Well, I will go ahead and let you get on with today's session. Let me know if you need anything, and good luck.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining me this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending where you're listening in from or in the future. Hope everything's going well if you're listening to the recording of this. Excited to be here today. I had done a session last week on AI. So some of you, I see, I recognize a few names here that are jumping in that attended that. And today, the other topic, that I think really is on everyone's mind, AI is emerging technology and then security, which is just obviously a need to have and something that is also evolving, but unfortunately not for the better in some situations. So today, some of the topics that that I will be covering is going through, right? What is the kind of the state of these cyber threats, right? What are these attack vectors? Where are people coming through? What are some of the risks out there? And some interesting stats and compelling stats that obviously, some are scary to see, but also some of them I think will help you figure out, right? Where are these risks and things that we have, and how do we plug these risks, right? How do we address them with our IT solutions and remote support solutions specifically as well? Also going to talk about some of that specific functionality, some of which exist in our rescue product, but in general that you should be looking at in any tool that has a different level of access to systems, right, for either support or remote access. And then lastly, similar for those that did join our AI webinar last week, I'll be going through some exciting new functionality and offerings that we have with Rescue from our enhanced security offering as well. So excited to jump into this. As Danny said, if you have any questions, comments, whatever, please drop them in as we're going through. And, if we think they're relevant, we can jump in and address them then, or we'll get them to the end. Had some great questions, I know, in the last session. So hoping that we'll get a few coming through this time. And what I'll also say is a lot of the information I pulled together for this, I had some conversations with our CISO, Tilla Tarak, who helped me actually build out a lot of the content for this, and I got his insights. Had helped host a panel a few months back of CISOs as well, where I pulled some information from. So some of this is my own perception, but a lot too is taken from leading security experts. So hopefully that gives you a little more credibility of saying, hey, what's this marketing guy telling me about security? Um, but before I do have to put on my marketing hat and briefly, for those that aren't familiar with Rescue, give you the quick 101 elevator pitch on the product that's sponsoring this webinar, which is LogMeIn Rescue, which is an enterprise grade, powerful, customizable, flexible, technical remote support solution. So it has everything from desktop to mobile support, support of actually hardware with visual support capabilities in it, and really powerful in-session functionality. So not just remote control, right? A lot of behind-the-scenes features with in-session scripting, diagnostics, the ability to run or start services. As I said, run different scripts on that behind the scenes, and also really powerful in-session AI features with AI diagnostics as well as remediation recommendations, session summaries from your in-session, and then a lot of the other powerful functionality really that makes it quote unquote enterprise grade to me is by the customization flexibility on the workflows and how the product can be deployed, from over 10 different connection methods to branding customization to really powerful security functionality, which we're going to talk about today. So I won't dive too much into those. Okay, so that's Rescue at a glance. I will take off my kind of marketing hat now, but obviously wanted to let you know about that. And if there's any questions related to the webinar specific to this that you have, for Rescue in general, I'll be happy to answer those as well. So even if they're not security related, feel free to drop them in the question box. Okay, so let's take a step back, right, and think about security today, right, and cybersecurity. What are some big numbers here and some evolving things that you should be mindful of? Well, first and foremost, the rising cost and financial cost of data breaches, it's skyrocketing. IBM actually has this really great report that they put out every year for security, and they always have some good stats. And this is a really compelling one that comes from it, right? And they show that the average cost of a breach has increased 10% year over year from 2023 to 2024. Right, so this is all in cost, and I have some slides on the total cost, like what really makes up this cost of a breach, not just ransomware paid or or potential downtime, but there's other vectors to that as well. So increased cost associated, if you happen to have a breach, and more companies are getting impacted by this. And then from the other end of it, ransomware stats, right? So ransomware attacks, which are one of the primary cyber threats today, 80% of the time are starting from remote access tools and technology. 80% of the time, right? That is a wild, wild, wild number, right? In 2023, that number was, I think, 58%. And in 2024, it jumped up to 80%, and it's just growing, right? Their attackers are increasingly exfiltrating data from people. Third-party ransomware attacks are on the rise, and so supply chain attacks, the like, we'll touch on. But again, 80% of the time, and this is why it's imperative. And I really thought it was important to kind of go through where are these openings, right? And just to highlight, right, looking back at just 2024 alone, I just want to highlight, right, like these are the type of stories that are coming out. These are the type of things, very high profile, high industries, places that you think should be very secure, technology that positions itself potentially as secure, that are having these breaches. One that happened at the end of last year, for those who are familiar with the U.S. Treasury, that hackers breached it through a remote access tool. The healthcare attacks, there was actually a few in 2024, and healthcare from a compliance and locking down information, very secure industries, right? There was two, I think, that were pretty Ascension Health and Health Equity, both records that got breached. Downtime in the Ascension Health, it took 6 weeks to actually fully restore all their services because of this ransomware attacks. And then, two companies out there, and it's not because they're necessarily competitors of us, but these were two things again that I think shine light on the fact that tools that have nodes and hosts on devices are inherently at risk, and why it's very important, right? Both TeamViewer and AnyDesk in 2024 suffered similar potential compromised networks and cyber attacks on their production systems, right? So not getting in through maybe your agents or users, but getting in through the technology itself, right? And so it's a big risk that runs across, and there's steps that can be taken to kind of mitigate these, right? But before we jump into that, right, we have to think about, okay, well, where does the risk come from, right? Across all IT technology and cyber threats in general, what are the security risks, right? So, wanted to break down, and talking with our CISO here, right? He said it's a good way to kind of look at it, right? You have vectors that are both human-centric, and then there's the technology, right? And both have their inherent risk and inherent problems to them. So let's talk about human-centric, on the first side, right? And this is, I think, in the spot where AI is really making an impact, unfortunately for the worse, with more advanced social engineering attacks and how things are being phished. So thinking about, right, making sure, whether there's the massive information, how companies are able to phish or social engineer personalized through AI experiences to reaching out to your employees, right, or to customers, positioning themselves at other organizations and getting access to your systems from multiple different ways. Insider threats is also another thing that can't be taken lightly, right? It might not be purposeful or malicious. So I'm saying insider threats, not maybe you have a worker that is disgruntled and decides to open up the keys to the kingdom. No, but it could be accidental, right? So thinking about the sense of someone that has left their laptop open in a coffee shop, joins unsecured networks in certain places, is using tools or open source technology that the company isn't approved or isn't locked down, right? So that's when I say insider threats. It's not necessarily someone always being malicious. It's more likely just someone making a mistake, right? Or maybe doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And the other one is compromised credentials, right? I think 30% or something of a lot of these breaches kind of come through compromised credentials, to think about it, which is huge, right? And that's repeat password usage and the like. And a lot of the compromised credentials come out of those kind of phishing attacks and so forth, where people can get them. Then you think about it on the other side, right? You have kind of the technical exploits of it, right? So the tools and technology that you're using today. So one is deploying updates or piece of information just have malware that's penetrated and gone through, right? So not being able to kind of control those updates and it propagating out. The other one are just vulnerabilities. And so this is software vulnerabilities, if you think about it, right? And these could be two ends, right? There's third-party breaches, which is, I mentioned on the previous slide. two of which potentially could have led to some serious risk. Um, or it could just be misconfiguration, right? How you're setting up your software and deploying it. Is it configured for your network right? Is it locked the right way? Does our access is correct, right? So it's not just necessarily the underlying software itself, but how you're actually deploying it and setting it up. And what access points or things are being left open to potentially increase the risk for your organization. And then there's your brute force side, right? There's just really these hackers that are going in and really just knocking their way through different technology and systems you have to penetrate them. Um, so break-ins, DDoS attacks and things like that to really just take over devices and machines. Um, what I also want to add is because these are some pretty serious areas and pretty serious risks. I wanted to go out, after talking to our CISO and say, okay, well, can we put some numbers to these? Can we put some impact, right? What is the gravity of this? Well, one that I thought was huge, right? If you think about that compromise potential, is that 50% of attacks now start with credential theft. That's crazy. Greater than half of the attacks start with credential theft. Right. And this is where it comes down to training your employees, making sure different things, right? Having different types of multi-factor authentication. I think there was another study that Microsoft had put out that showed 99% of breached accounts had no MFA set in on them, right? That's wild, right? In this day and age, that seems, unacceptable, that most organizations can get hacked that way. Um, Next one, 48% of 2024 breaches stemmed from compromised vendor access. Right? So outsourced IT support accounts, they often have these broad privileges if you think about them, right? That technology that's going in to help manage and monitor and make your lives easier, potentially from a technical support side of it, can come back to bite you if not done the right way, right? With nearly half of them having accounted for those breaches, right? As I mentioned, those healthcare ones where as a result of those, or vendor credential theft led to those major incidents, right? And so again, this is a vendor maybe not working purposely to make mistakes, but it's very serious when you're looking at vendors and evaluating them and looking at their habits and so forth, that you're kind of taking this into account. And the last one, which in my take of these is probably the lowest hanging fruit that should be addressed, is that 70% of these vendor related or software related breaches involved over permissioned accounts, right? Really just saying, hey, everyone has everything to have it, not taking that least privileged access type approach to users. And sometimes that's because a tool doesn't have the granular permissions you should have. And sometimes it's just, laziness to kind of define different roles and so forth or whatever, right? So there's lots of learnings from that as well. So let's double click one step deeper, and because I think a lot of those what I just said can apply broadly to the IT and technical ecosystem at large, right? But I want to narrow in a little bit for remote IT tools specifically, right? The ones we were talking about earlier with the 80% through remote access tools, right? And so considerations that you should have when deploying a tool like like LogMeIn Rescue or anything else that has that level of access and can get on devices, right? Um, so first one is, authentication mechanisms, right? A big thing is these weaker mechanisms that are put in place without password policies, without MFA offered in them or turned on or required or whatever. The next one for these tools, right? So I've already mentioned the authentication previously, right? Which can actually thwart credential theft almost immediately. Um, is on these tools is kind of patching or update controls, right? And this goes back to that potential malware and things that can push through. How much control do you have over patches that are pushed out with software and technology that's on your systems, right? Can you test them? Can you deploy them in small ecosystems? Can you confirm the validity of them, right? Or are they just always pushed out, or how regularly they get pushed out, and so forth, right? So having that level and understanding that with any tools that are going to be deployed on your hosts, the ultimate control and testing and visibility for patching these things or updated audit control on them. Think about the last year the CrowdStrike situation, right, where there was an update that was pushed out and took down globally because there wasn't that type of control that an IT person could have to kind of test in smaller increments. Next one is insufficient encryption. I'd hope in this day and age, any technology that's worth its salt kind of has the high levels of encryption with data at rest or in transfer and things like that, which really make those brute force attacks and kind of penetrating them that way less likely to inject or capture something in the middle. Um, Access control. So again, I previously mentioned this on the last slide around being over permissioned. This is really important, right? Identifying kind of least privileged access and starting there, right? And that's to me can stop a lot of potential issues, both deliberately, opening things up, human error just with accessing or doing something somewhere, or human error, that they're compromised and now they have access to a tool that has the keys to the kingdom in a sense. Um, Monitoring and logging is also another thing. I think, a lot of times, depending on the organizations, if you're a more mature organization that has kind of a built out team that you're thinking about and a security, right, you're maybe auditing this more regularly, figuring out to make sure that you can monitor anyone that's having access to this kind of this trail, and you can be notified if something seems off from being accessed. And actually, I have an interesting example of that. My our company here, I think this speaks to the severity that we take security here at GoTo. I have used on my phone, I have a VPN when I'm not connected to my home Wi-Fi that I'll turn on to secure my phone itself. And I was doing stuff remotely with the VPN on and accessing my email, I guess, for a while from that, and my VPN connected through somewhere else that wasn't from my normal location. And my IT immediately reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're seeing you're accessing your email from somewhere strange. Is this you? Or is it potentially someone else?" Right? And so I think these levels of understanding, not just the tools secure, but what are the practices at that organization, right? Monitoring and stuff like that, so they can't, if they are going to get hacked or penetrated their systems, how are they potentially stopping that, as well? And the last one, third-party integrations, something to obviously be mindful of if you are connecting your tools to other solution, which is almost a must-have these days and age to make more workflows more seamless. How do those connections work? Can you trust them? Were they built by valid sources, by the providers themselves? Where's data being stored? How's it being transferred back and forth? And any risks to kind of get in the middle there of being addressed as well. So a lot of what I said centered around, vendors and things you work with. I would love to know this just for, I love putting up these polls to kind of understand just for myself and can help maybe feed a future webinar that I have, is how often are you conducting a security review of your current software, right? Is this something that you're doing annually or more, maybe every 2 years, 3 to 5 years, maybe initial purchase? So we'll go push up this poll and we'll take 25 seconds to quickly go in, but it would really be great to see where everyone is in their current state of doing kind of security reviews. So for your technology, so toggle that in as it's coming through. I'll be excited to see. I mean, it's interesting. I see a lot of organizations that come in and purchase our solutions, depending on their size, but some have very thorough security reviews at the outfront and at renewal time by the larger ones. But then you see others that they don't even. They'll look. They'll say, hey, this company's got their SOC 2 or SOC 3. They must be fine. Uh, okay. Sometimes that works. A lot of times you might need to go the extra level. All right, so let's I think we could probably push this back. Looks like we have critical mass here. And it's great to see. Well, we're kind of across the board. So nice to see that nearly 50% are saying annually or more frequently, which is great. Um, for those that are only doing an initial purchase or never, hopefully, not trying to play scare tactics or anything here with what I'm doing, but taking kind of serious, the technology and tools you out there to understand what's the potential risk to me, right? And even if you are a smaller organization, you say, hey, I'm small, who's going to come after me? Cyber threats these days and these malicious actors, they're pretty not, undiscerning about who they're going after, right? They go wide and they cast a net, and then once they catch something, they know there's some opportunity there and some dollars to be had. So awesome. Thank you for filling that out. I think we'll have one more poll in this a little later on as well. All right. So from that, let's actually talk about the real cost of security. So I had that number earlier on, a 10% increase in the total cost associated with breaches. But really, what plays into that? Where does this impact come from, right? Where are these costs associated? Well, first is that financial, right? And from that similar report I mentioned before, the IBM one, which I thought was great, is the average cost of a breach last year was $4.8 million. That's the average cost, which was 10% higher than the previous year, right? That's the attackers that are stealing data, they're encrypting it, and so forth. And that can get even higher, right? You think about they're actually stealing things, encrypting it, and locking it down from the ransomware standpoint can significantly even get higher than that. And the longer an incident lives, the higher the cost, right? So if you don't have an immediate remediation plan, you can assume that that's going to escalate pretty quickly in associated costs for your business. Downtime, obviously another space to think about, right? And I think this is common that people think about, ransomware, okay, is there something that needs to be paid out or data that I need to get back access to? And the other time is what is this impacting from a day to day, right? And 75% of breaches cost come from that actual business disruption um, and that post breach response. Um, and so understanding, that kind of that downtime impact and what it's going to do and its tentacles to go out to your organization is important, right? And this goes back to that, having an incident response plan set up and ready to go. So you're running from, minute zero if God forbid something's identified, right? How quickly can it be identified and how quickly can you remediate it to lower this time, which continues to eat up both in costs, but also on the next one, right? Your reputation, lost business that you have, right? Any organization that's in the news for any type of breaches or incidents, you're going to have a serious risk with your current customers, obviously, that you'll probably lose some business, churn some accounts, lose a customer base because they no longer trust you. Because you have a lot of CISOs today that are saying, yeah, if there's technology that's had an issue, even if it was stopped and never really impacted, they have kind of a non-negotiable like, hey, we're going to cut and run. That's it. We don't want to work with that organization until they come back and whatever it may be, right? There's so much technology and solutions out there. You have that ability to do that. And the other piece too about just general public opinion, if your current customers and then potential prospects not coming to you because of your reputation, right? Impacting that new business and ongoing growth. And then lastly, for those that are in a regulatory space, here's another thing to kind of pile on from cost, right? Regulatory fines for HIPAA settlements, GDPR, maybe class action lawsuits that are going to go into your organization can escalate and exceed millions of dollars very, very quickly, right? And so just thinking about that, even if you're a smaller organization, maybe your numbers aren't going to be as big as somebody sitting here, but you're going to get hit in all of these, right? And I would say even for a mid-sized or small organization, maybe you don't have that elasticity to rebound potentially as easy as some of these larger companies. So for those who are saying never or only at initial session, I think there's importance to doing that. And maybe if you don't have the skill set or knowledge in house, obviously there's plenty of service providers and consultants out there that can help with doing these reviews. We can highlight a lot of things for you. Okay. So Chris, you're talking about a lot of the bad, a lot going on. What can we do, right? How can we mitigate some of these problems? So there's the two ends of it to think about. You have all these entry points. There's a lot to close. So let's think first on the vendor side, right? And coming as a vendor, this is what I see when there are serious organizations coming to us and doing full kind of analysis before, and I've seen most of these all the time, right? So as you're analyzing this or looking at vendors, one, think about certifications they have, right? Are they, ISO, SOC 2, SOC 3, depending on your regulations, are they HIPAA compliant or HIPAA compatible, and so forth, right? So look at those certifications, right? I would say if you're working with a company and they don't have a SOC or ISO, just leave immediately, right? Like at that point, that at least gives you some foundation to understanding, hey, is this a serious company? Are their processes secure? Are they following rigorous processes? And I see how these certifications and reviews go from the other side, from the vendor side, and they are very thorough. So when I can tell you that, you have a good starting point when a company has those, even if you don't have the skill set or knowledge or expertise in house to do the review yourself or evaluation from a security standpoint, there's some comfort that you could take in knowing that they have those, that they're doing a lot of core things right, with permissions to access to how they're deploying code, to who has access to what systems, customer information, and so forth. Product documentation, right? Technical documentations, architecture documents, right? Make sure you're reviewing those and understanding that piece of it. Understanding, right, of how do they roll out updates? How do I have access to those, and so forth. Customer support, right? Um, Understanding, right, what happens if there is an issue, right? What is the support that I will get if I notice something erroneous in my account or something weird in my logging? What kind of information can you provide provide to me from a customer support standpoint. God forbid if there's something serious, but even if there's something benign in a sense. Then be specific, right, with those questions. As I said, sometimes it's more general. And a vendor, again, I work with a lot of salespeople and understand that they'll try to hand wave, hey, we're secure, we do this, right? But be specific and understand your use case and problems and concerns, and have them answer those questions, right? This day and age, there's plenty of places online, right? Maybe you have cybersecurity insurance; they can provide you those type of information you'd want to get from your vendor, if you're looking for that, or just looking out there on best practices for evaluating security of technology. Hey, what are those top 10 questions that we should make sure we're asking? And hopefully some of them here I've highlighted for you as we were going through. Now, the other end of it, right? So I said there's the technology side and the vendor side of it. There's also the human error, right? And this is where there's a lot of that bigger risk. You saw earlier that what was that? Nearly 50% start with compromise. Over 50% start with compromised credentials. You can have the best evaluation of your vendor in the world. That's not going to prevent that, right? So it's really important that you have a thorough, detailed, and holistic approach to employee training for security, right? And you know, obviously there's a level of compromising a little bit of simplicity, or giving some more headaches, but to be more secure, right? And unfortunately, that's what employees have to understand. I think if you bring them in and you explain to them what the cost is, right, a little bit more of these kind of headaches or extra steps or hoops to jump through to be more secure is important, right? So making sure that employees are following password best practices. So everything from not reusing them, using a password tool, right, that's going to create a 14 or 15 digit passcode that's using a variety of numbers and characters and things like that. Right? So ensuring those password best practices, turning on MFA, having all those things set up. General security awareness, right? There are a lot of those, unfortunately, cheesy courses out there that I know I've taken plenty of to understand, hey, a USB drive can be hacked if somewhere, or, if wherever different security, if you're using unsecure Wi-Fi, that was actually one of the reasons I started using VPN on my phone, right? Watching those videos, as cheesy and stuff they are, I think it brings a level of just general awareness and potential risk, what I should be looking for, right? That, people are randomly emailing you. I mentioned the AI that's gotten involved to personalize a lot of these social engineering or phishing scams, right? Well, they'll know your boss and your boss's boss, right? And they'll detail and specific to you, call you saying that you're from someone. I had previously one time got a robocall saying that it was actually from my CEO. It was very strange. But again, these personalized experiences. So improving that security awareness, letting people know, hey, these are the ways people are coming at us. Be mindful of them, and how to treat it. And then lastly, and this is, I think, is the hardest one, particularly from an IT standpoint, is that shadow IT side of it, right? You're going to have a lot of employees. I'm guilty as charged and done it a few times. Unfortunately, is going to go out, they have a problem, they're going to find technology in this day and age, a free trial of it or some kind of open source freeware, and use it, right? And if this is something that has access to a company laptop or system, and it is not a secure tool, right? It doesn't have those certifications that I mentioned earlier. Um, a lot can go awry, right? Or it could just be a tool that's not secure and has embedded malware and stuff. And so as soon as it's deployed on a device, you're in trouble, right? So locking down devices, encouraging, this shadow IT, and part of that is also being a good partner from an IT standpoint for employees, so they don't have to go on shadow IT, right? They have a problem understanding, hey, you have this need and we don't have a tool. Let us evaluate for you. Let us take a look at these, right? Um, Extra effort on your side, but the return or lowering that risk from a security standpoint, I would say it kind of makes it almost non-negotiable. Okay. So let's talk about the features, right? So mention a lot of things here, but what about actual functionality in these remote support, remote access tools that can help make you stronger? But before I do that, I actually just wanted to level set because I think some people sometimes confound remote access with remote support, and there's inherent different risks in both that I did want to bring up. So first, from that kind of unattended remote access, that is where there is something deployed on a device, right? There's pre-installed host software. It has an admin level of access already on this device, right? So it's inherently a little riskier. And these are usually things that are managed and owned technology, owned endpoints that you have out there. On the other side of it, for this ad hoc traditional technical remote support, there usually isn't any pre-deployed host. There's an end user that's usually required there. They're unmanaged endpoints, and that entry point leaves more at risk for what's used more social engineering and phishing exercises than potentially your remote access. So not the brute force you're going to have more of your human error on the ad hoc remote side compared to the remote access side. I'd love to know for those that are listening. I said I was going to have one more poll. I promise this was the last one. Are you using both of these today? Do you use one and not the other? Do you not use either? Hey, maybe not. Be interesting to know how you potentially troubleshoot remote customers, employees. But take a quick second, pop this up. Hopefully, this is a fast one for you to go in. But again, this also lets me understand as I'm kind of talking through the rest of this and understanding how to position things and explain things if I need to over-index or kind of go a little more specific. So I see a lot of people coming in quickly here. A little bit of both, a little ad hoc. All right. I'll give you 5 more seconds. Get them in. Final calls. I always wanted to be like maybe one of those auction house barkers. These people got to talk fast. I'm told I talk fast sometimes. Anyway, all right. I think we can close it up, Danny, and push back out there. All right. So we got a little mix. The majority of you are both, or maybe ad hoc remote support, which doesn't surprise me. I know looking at some of the companies and stuff that are joining this from that more kind of technical customer remote support, not the IT side of the house, where yeah, you'd be using more ad hoc side. For those of you that are not using any, would love to know, if someone does have a remote problem, how you're dealing with those, or maybe you're interested in something like Rescue. Great tool for ad hoc or unattended remote support. Sorry, I'll take my sales hat off on that one. Awesome. All right, so let's jump back into it then. So that was great. Appreciate everyone participating in these polls. I think it keeps you on your toes. Make sure you're kind of engaged there. So as I mentioned, features, functionalities of these tools, right, that we should be thinking about. So the first side that I wanted to touch on is the remote support and access right from an admin level. What are things that are almost you need to have, right? Table stakes that if this is not set up, you're not being vigilant to implement these robust security measures. So, and then obviously I said there's some advanced things that I think maybe certain industries might require them more. Start off enterprise level authentication, non-negotiable, right? If a tool that you're using doesn't have these or you haven't set them up, 2FA or multi-factor, whatever you want to call it, SSO, obviously a great first step to have set up if you're able to do that, and the tool supports it. It reduces the need. I think SSO just in itself, unlike something like multi-factor, which adds another layer of friction, usually SSO in my mind kind of improves the user experience, right? Because it reduces the need to kind of track multiple password and it kind of has that centralized access for the admins. So that's one of the things I think that's more secure and also improves the end user experience to log into it, right? Whether it's an employee, an agent, or whatnot. Um, this is one that I was mentioning a lot earlier on, right? Making sure that there's access controls and very robust access controls, right? So this is vital in my mind for maintaining kind of this principle of least privileged access, right? You have to ensure that only users have access to resources and privileges that they'll need for their specific role, right? You want to go back and assume that most people that need the access don't need it at all, and then assume, okay, well, what are they doing and how do they, what do they need to get their job done, right? And that's all you give to them. Um, Audit reports, this is just huge in my mind this day and age. Audits, logging, whatever you want to consider it, having that ability to say, hey, can I confirm that nothing wonky is going on in my ecosystem or environment? Can I then, great, and God forbid if something does happen, can I check why? Is there the trail that I could go back and see what was used, how things were used, how my remote support tool was used, potentially somewhere, who accessed the system from where, and so forth, right? So having that level of audit that either A, can be downloaded and used by yourself from a customer facing standpoint, or like all companies, there's additional logging and information that just occurs within the tool itself that you have to reach out to your provider themselves and they could give you access to that, right? That goes back to that customer support and working with you, God forbid there's an issue. And then encryption, as I mentioned earlier, right? If there's a company that doesn't have 256-bit encryption at this point, 1.2 TLS, or at this point maybe 1.3, right? Just nope. Probably not worth it. Again, they're not taking security seriously, and so I wouldn't take them seriously in my mind. The extra mile from setting up kind of from the admin level, so they're not just role like access controls to the system, but really this agent level permission, right? So if someone has access to your tool, can you set up these very granular controls over what someone can do within that remote support or remote access tool, right? Assume that not all technicians or not all agents need to be able to, example, to run scripts on everything, need to be able to do things behind the screen, to blank out computer monitors, even remote control stuff, right? Maybe just seeing and walking through is good enough. So make sure there's that ability to set very granular agent level permissions. And the other one, just from an access standpoint, depending, right, the different restrictions you can set up from IP level, and we'll talk a little bit about this, as there's some functionality specifically in Rescue that help you with this, but really limiting who can access from where your solution to certain ranges, can't use it from home, can't get someone else to maybe get support from somewhere else. So there's a lot of functionality there from the IP access side, right? And so in the remote work world, it's sometimes a little harder, but if they're known locations or you're connecting to different VPNs or things like that, it's easier to set these up. Okay. Now, what about the actual remote sessions themselves, right? The tool itself for access and support. So kind of together here, there's a little bit for the unattended access as well as the ad hoc remote support. So one is kind of for ad hoc remote support, which it looked like the majority of you were using. One-time use pins, right? So this pin-based sessions, and make sure one time and they're done. There's some providers and technology out there that have the ability to reuse pins, which is a big no-no because again, that just leaves another entry point into someone else's solution or someone to fake your organization. Make sure the end user is always in control, right? And this also, from a security standpoint, protects a few things, but one is it protects your organization from saying, the end user claims that you did something or didn't do something, but also allows an end user, if your tool got hacked into and someone is posing as your technical support and they're going into an end user's device, that user has the ability to shut it down quick, right? And can kind of end it and make sure that nothing's going on. Similar to the one-time use pin, a single-use applet. What we've seen, unfortunately, is that a lot of times these ad hoc tools will just have basically an entry point that's deployed to a device. So it kind of acts like remote access-ish. It doesn't have the admin level, but it can be reutilized. And when it's on there, what can end up happening is that malicious hackers can actually hijack that applet, right, to gain access. So whether it's our rescue product or other ones to look at, it's temporary application executable. And once it's used once, it's done. Again, that seems to me it should be non-negotiable. I don't understand why some providers out there do these multi-use applets. They think it's a level of reducing friction, I guess, for the end user. But at the end of the day, that friction versus the security risk to me does not feel like a good trade-off, to be honest with you. The next one, and this goes with there's the access piece, but even technology. Make sure that the software updates, if you have host software deployed, or even if it's a downloadable technician, make sure you have control over those updates so things aren't just getting pushed out so you can test them and look at them beforehand. A lot of the supply chain attacks that happened previously, whether you think of the big Kaseya one a few years ago or the SolarWinds one, were because, updates of applications were just getting pushed out without the ability to kind of control those or see them, right? Host credential requirements. This is another one where when you're setting up unattended access, which again boggles my mind why this is the default for some technology out there. What I've seen is that there's an unattended device out there. You have your technician or agent that's going to log into it, and they don't need to necessarily put in the credentials of that host device. They can just use their own product's password. So you're using XYZ remote support tool, and you have a password to get into the XYZ remote support tool, and then you can just use that password to access that device. I think most of you can kind of see the issue there. God forbid that credential gets compromised, it can now get access to any of those devices out there. So I encourage you to try and set up, and there's some that you can remember the password to do it. I would say if you don't feel like you really need to have those remembered, I would set the setting, if you really want to be secure, is anytime someone's trying to access those devices, require that host level password, right? That really does it goes above and beyond to really help lock those down a little bit, to be honest with you. And then user admin training, again, this should be kind of almost non-negotiable. How to use a tool, how to not use a tool, how to configure them properly, right? Maybe you have a success manager, documentation with the tool you're using to make sure you have it set up the right way. Remember, I almost at the top of this I talked about, right? Misconfiguration of devices is actually a big issue out there. And this is where a lot of that training comes into play. On the other side, going the extra mile for, whether it's ad hoc support or unattended, there's some things you could do in the ad hoc support space, is setting up kind of, what you kind of considered a self-hosted pin page. So what it does, it kind of gives you the ability to have kind of a branded pin location to ensure that you can train your employees to only use this location to go in, start a session, or customers, so they can kind of trust your organization, so no one can go in and pretend from a phishing standpoint to be your company and get someone to go in and use another tool. Validating that pins that are being used for employees are originating from your actually own support tool is another piece of it. Again, going above and beyond as more and more of these kind of social engineering, hacking, remote support tools are being used. And then just also blocking tools that are not being used in your company, right? Whether it's built into technology you have, whether you're using something like a Zscaler, just blocking these other tools is a really great way to prevent it, right? So if you have a tool like Rescue you're using, you leave that one open, block everything else. Okay, so that's the high level. I did want to spend time double clicking on some of the rescue security overview, which actually hits on a few of what I just talked about. I have a little demo video as well. I know security is hard to demo, but I will pull that up in a little bit, I think, to drive home actually some of the features that I just talked about and that I'll speak a little more about in a second. But what I wanted to highlight is kind of the layers of security within Rescue and to kind of show how serious we're taking this, and where we're trying to also help companies go the extra mile if they so need it, right? So it's core just security functionality in my mind from the Rescue's own environment, right? And locking that down and securing them with a number of different features. One is over 40, I think the most in the market, of different agent and admin level permissions, right? To really set up, as I said, those role-based actions controls, least privilege access to the tool and what can be done in it, both for agents that are using it as well as for admins that are configuring the environment, adding users and so forth. The authentication methods, so included at no additional cost, things like multi-factor, SSO, strong password requirements, unlike other companies that charge for things like that. Very granular audit reports, 12 plus different reports, everything from who logged into your admin center to who changed something in your admin center, down to sessions that were run, what was done in those sessions, who was joining the sessions, and things that were said in those sessions, and kind of everything in between where your agents logged in from or didn't log in from. And so you can identify a lot of this even on your own, but then we could also potentially help you if needed. Um, Host device credential requirements. I mentioned this one earlier, and again, this is just something passionate to me, which I don't understand. You can configure Rescue where you have your unattended device that anytime an agent connects to that device, a technician connects, they need to put in that host credentials, right? So God forbid their account was hacked, you didn't find out in time, they couldn't just get into all of your unattended devices. And then also host software controls, right, are built into the tool as well. Our enhanced security side of it, it's kind of added protection and functionality, some of which we just rolled out and packaged up for those that really are in spaces and maybe more compliant organizations, or have a lot of sensitive data that help you really protect from end user error and social engineering issues, right, which are getting, as I said, much more advanced with AI. So things like device or IP restricted access, so the ability to kind of lock down where and what something's being accessed from or who's providing support. PIN code validation, which I kind of mentioned in the previous one, so verifying where someone connects from is where they're connecting from. Approved host for PIN entry. I'm going to go through a few of these on a couple of slides, so I won't go into detail. Credential injection, which is also something that's coming soon to kind of help you join into them. So let me double click into this kind of enterprise, this enhanced security package, right? That has, as I mentioned, right, device-based restricted access, IP access, enterprise domains, which is something that's coming, another also hosted domains, and PIN code validation in there. And so let me talk about these a little bit, and then I'll show you, as I said, a quick little demo of a couple of these as well to bring them to life. I do find that security is hard to understand, right? Encryption, you kind of talk through it, understand it, but some of these are really workflows that when you see them, it kind of comes to life a little more. So the first thing, which we're really excited about, that we just rolled out, is what we call a device-based restricted access package. And so what essentially this does is it restricts any type of remote support, remote access to pre-authorized devices only. So what does that mean? So essentially means if you have owned and managed devices, you can configure our technology onto those devices that they will only get supported from your rescue account, right? And you can block everything else. So it's kind of like a concept of that Zscaler or whatever, but it goes kind of that extra mile to really lock those devices down, ensures only specific devices can engage in those rescue sessions with those hosts. And so human error thrown out the window. Really excited about this. Um, so it prevents those kind of unauthorized devices from being supported, as well as going the other way of unauthorized technicians from supporting said devices. It helps you kind of meet those regulatory demands and things like that, cybersecurity, insurance, and the like. The next one is PIN code validation. So this is going to be in the demo. So this one I'll bring to life in a second for you. But really what this is again, that extra level of social engineering attacks. And so it ensures that only valid account specific PIN codes are accepted, right? So what's going to happen is you have someone trained to go to use we have a desktop shortcut where you've put your PIN code up on your own heist, on your own support site or something. If someone else comes in and like, oh yeah, I'm from your IT team, I need to help you out with something. Here, put your PIN code in. It will not work in that location, and it'll get rejected. You'll get kind of this pop up that says you can't do it, and it kind of integrates without disrupting that end user flow. To be honest with you, which is great. And then lastly, something that's called kind of approved hosts for PIN entry. So what this does is it prevents end users from entering their PIN codes that they're getting on malicious or unauthorized domains. So it kind of safeguards your environment or your device, right? So they're getting a PIN code, can't go into someone's maybe faking your domain and kind of spoofing something, so they're only interacting with these legitimate secure entry points to reduce that risk. And again, elevates that level of compliance measures, maintains that kind of branded experience too for your customers. So that way it also kind of helps your organization. So um, what I'd like to do now, we've got I'll run this and then we're going to open up for questions. So I think, Dan, if we have this little demo to pull up, it's a few minutes long. And then please, if you have any questions or stuff to get in, drop those in and we'll go from there.
So the first thing that we show here on the left-hand side, you see my calling card. Now that's just a standalone application that you can fully brand. That heart, the title, the help button, that's all branded within my rescue account. On the right-hand side, you see my technician console. So I'm generating a PIN and I'm giving it to my customer. So what you'll see with a good PIN is it will be validated that it belongs to my account. So I wouldn't be able to pretend like I'm with my account and connect. You'll see everything's working as normal. The applet starts connecting, and I have the capability of launching a remote control session here. You'll get any disclaimers that you get when you're connecting normally. And then you can see I have remote view and control of the screen, just like any other session. Now the next session, I got the PIN code from a colleague that is not part of my account, so that you can see what happens when somebody that's not part of your account enters the PIN code. Right away, we get this message, invalid PIN code. The PIN code you've entered originates from an unrecognized source. So if somebody decided to pretend to be me and give my customer a PIN code from their own account, it would be blocked. Now, the next feature I want to show you is the allow listed hosts feature, and it can also use company PIN validation. So what I'll do here is just generate a PIN and go to logmein123.com. So again, logmein123.com is the main or generic PIN page that everybody uses to join a session. Now I have the allow listed hosts turned on, so immediately it will redirect me to my own PIN page, which is also slightly crude because I'm not a web developer. But here's my PIN page. So now if I enter that same PIN and connect to technician, you'll see that it starts to download the applet just as it typically would, joining from LogMeIn123.com. So here it's joining the session just as you normally would from LogMeIn123.com. It's validated on my custom pin entry page that the pin is coming from my account. And here we are joining the session just as we would. So this is, you can use a combination of the custom pin entry page and the calling card within your environment, or just one or the other. One good example of why you would use a custom pin page is if you are providing internal support. You may have a company portal that everybody uses or an IT portal that everybody uses. You can actually brand that and put the pin entry page in your company portal and block logmein123.com altogether as well. That last one is the pin code invalid. So I had entered in the second company or pin code, and that said invalid. But you saw one successful and one wasn't successful is what I wanted to demonstrate there with both the calling card and the company pin or custom pin entry page.
Awesome. So hopefully that brought to life a little bit more of the functionality that we have in Rescue. Again, I know a lot of the security stuff is hard to see, but or hard to demo, but just wanted to bring to life, exactly how what would happen in some of those experiences and the safeguards, what they do to the experience and flow for your company. So with that, I think we have a few minutes left. Danny, if there are any questions that are coming up, happy to jump on any of those.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for that amazing presentation, Chris. Always knock it out of the park. So appreciate that. Let me pull up some questions. And if you guys have any additional ones, it's not too late to throw them in here. I do have a few coming in. Let me grab it. See here. Sorry, just filtering through. All right. Sorry about that. 1 second. Let me just. Which one here?
Want me to see if I can pull them up on mine, Danny?
Yeah, I'm just having a issue grabbing them here.
Sure, let me see if I can pull them up on. We have one monitor here, so it's hard, but 1 second.
Okay, here we go, Chris. Sorry about
Okay.
that. Okay. Any recommendations on which areas of AI to adopt first is the first question that we have coming in.
Around AI, interesting. Yeah, I mean, from an AI standpoint, I guess that's maybe as it's related to security with AI. I'm not really sure. I think I can jump into AI if we maybe
Yeah.
because I talked about AI at the beginning with it, but yeah. So it's kind of a loaded question to jump into. I think for AI from a security standpoint, if that's maybe the direction that the question is going around, I think what we might want to do is to look at anything from um, you know, looking at kind of audit trails or analytics or things like that, that can use. There's a lot of tools out there for kind of logins and stuff. I think like the tool that I said, my company had used to identify when I logged in from somewhere else, was just analyzing trends and so forth. So I think that's some of the technology. Sorry, I'm kind of thrown off by a little bit of the AI side, for security side. Sorry.
No worries about that. Sorry, we got a couple more coming in too. So here's one. Is there an extra charge cost to have the branded desktop icon on the customer's end?
Nope. So no charge at all for that. It is part of just the branding and the core product itself to kind of get in there and brand any aspect of it. You can have multiple actually branded calling cards. Doesn't just have to be one. You can brand different ones different ways as well.
Perfect. And then here's another one coming in regarding security holes created by employees. That is one of our biggest problems. Any other suggestions to getting adherence to security policies? Any advice there?
Um, yeah, I think one of it is bringing employees in kind of early in the process and explaining the why behind it, right? So understanding, I think, those pieces of information like I shared around what's the cost of a breach, what's the impact to our customers, and being kind of clear with them, right? Like, yeah, there's probably going to be some friction, is important to let them know. I think that bringing employees in, treat them almost as your customers as well, right? Bring them in as you're updating policies and changing things. Bring them in early to understand, hey, what's the potential impact to you? Is there a different way potentially that we could be doing it to not disrupt you as much as we can? And there's going to be obviously, I think, a little give gets in there that everyone's going to have to understand it. So being transparent on what's the potential impact and also why policies are going into effect, I've found it's fairly successful. I know it's something that we practice what we preach here, and I've heard that from again our CISO here, Attila, talking about that and how we get adoption at the company of having that kind of those conversations, early adopters, and so forth.
Perfect. Awesome. Very helpful. Another one actually just came in. Is there a manual or guidance on how to set all of this up?
Yeah, anything that I just showed in this demo, and I'm happy to follow up with after all in our support .logmein.com. There's full documentation and guidance for the admin center where all of this it can be configured and set up. And so some of this functionality does need to be turned on and activated from our systems and backend. So if you have an account manager that can help you out, or a success manager, if not, I am happy to help you as well and put you in contact with someone. So just let me know if you don't know who your account manager is or success manager, let me know and I can get someone in touch with you.
Thank you, Chris. Always trying to lend an extra hand. Okay, if we have a flat IT team, do you still think the role-based access controls are necessary or needed?
Um, I would say yes. Even if it's flat and everyone has the same levels, again, there might be different experience and seniority on the team, just what they're capable of. And so I would just take a step back and understand, yeah, maybe everyone's doing it. It still doesn't hurt to audit and understand that, hey, maybe someone does something that's different, and maybe because again it depends on your tool. As I said, rescue is, maybe I'm biased, the Cadillac of support tools, where it really just have, you can get all those bells and whistles and you can do stuff in there. There could be functionality in there that you just don't need and don't aren't going to use, and again just open up other potential risks or something with it, so not activating those, because maybe they're just maybe you're never going to run scripts during your sessions. Find and turn that off, right? So stuff like that, just to understand.
That's totally fair. And I have one more last chance as well if anyone else wants to submit another one. And possibly we can hit to it, but if not, I have one more right here, Chris. What should we be evaluating for security when it comes to integrating tools?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I think first is for anything that's out of the box, ensure that it was built by one of the vendors. I would say maybe built by the vendor that's passing the information over, not necessarily the one receiving it, because they know more about their APIs and how they're set up. So ensure it's kind of certified and so forth. Um, Also, for any of these integrations where you're getting from maybe one of your vendors, kind of integration stores, app stores, usually, and I'll caveat usually, but most of them have a very diligent process of evaluating these. So, for example, I'm thinking about a ServiceNow, Microsoft. To get into Microsoft, sometimes it varies, but I know with ServiceNow, to get into their store and do stuff, they do full audits and things like that, and kind of test things and so forth. And there's a very rigorous process that you have to go through. Microsoft, again, I know when we were building out our Teams integration and thing, so they are very stringent. So going through those, I think, is really important, right? Don't I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, if you're building your own integration out, like going and just looking around random Reddit threads or stuff, right? Because I don't know how much you can trust those. So think about the out of the box setup. If not, I'd work with a success manager, someone that's at that company to help you make sure you're deploying it right and setting it up properly.
Perfect. Awesome. And we are right at the top of the hour. Well, one on my end now, but still right there at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Chris, for your insights and walking us through that demo. It's always insightful joining your webinars. I hope you everyone enjoyed them as much as we do on the go-to side. And we hope to see you guys at our next webinar as well. Chris, again, thank you so much. And it was great having you here.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.